But I'll start again. Welcome to the Football Transfer Forum warm-up. Are we still calling it a warm-up, Tony?
We're not calling it a warm-up. We've warmed up so much now. We're knackered for the full match.
We're calling
We've
down
overdone
now.
it in the warm-up.
We're cooling down. But welcome to everybody that's tuning in again for today's session. Really looking forward to it today. We've had our usual 10-minute panic in the build-up to this starting. I've been in about every room in the house trying to get the one bit of internet that exists at this property, which I think I've managed to get now, which is great. But as I say, we've got a great hour and a half ahead of us, and as we all know, time will fly. So let's introduce everybody that's going to be with us this morning. First of all, as always, Guy Branston. Guy, how are you? You're also muted, Guy.
He's just unmuted me.
Sorry about that, Guy.
Am I on now? Because it says I'm on in my mic.
You're on.
Yeah, glad to be here as normal. Thanks for having me on.
Excellent, good stuff. Tony, obviously busy few weeks for everybody in football. How have you been?
Yeah, a bit frantic, but yeah, I'm quite happy. It's nice and sunny here in Newcastle, so all's good.
And of course, we're in a local lockdown, Tony, aren't we? So we've not been able to meet up at our favourite cafe at the frequency that we like.
To be honest, Ryan, this is my social life at the moment. This is as good as it gets. Meeting other guys socially on Zoom calls, on webinars. That's about me at the moment.
Fantastic stuff. And we've been really lucky over this series of webinars to have had some brilliant guests. And today's special guest is absolutely up there with all the rest of them. And so we'd really like to welcome Graeme Mathie, Sporting Director at Hibernian. Graeme, how are you?
Morning, guys. Yeah, good. Thanks, Ryan. Delighted to be here. So thanks very much for the invitation.
Yeah, he didn't mute you, Graeme. I noticed that he's done me and Guy, but he's left you unmuted.
He didn't put the subtitles on for me either, Ryan. So I don't know whether you need me to speak a bit slower with the accent from up north. I'm not sure.
We're further up north to understand you. It's everybody else. Good stuff. Well, let's have a look at what we're gonna get through today. If I just share my screen. Go. Okay. So as always, we're going to have sort of 20-30 minutes with Graeme, trying to get through as much insight as we can about obviously his role and what is going on at Hibs. Then just after 11, about 10 past 11, we're going to be joined by he's got the best name in football, Roberto Branco Martins. And I like to put a bit of flavour when I say that as well, Tony. General Counsel at the European Football Agents Association. So it's absolutely great to have Roberto with us, with everything that's going on with agents in the industry, the plans that FIFA have got to try and regulate agents once again. It's going to be fascinating to hear from Roberto. From Roberto, yeah, and then we'll finish off with a general panel discussion, trying to put some analysis in on how we think the summer and autumn transfer window has gone. Obviously, Tony, there's a little bit of time left in it, but it's going to be interesting to have a bit of reflection on what's happened.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, it shuts around Europe on the 5th. Most countries are shutting on the 5th of October on the Monday, and certainly that'll be for you in Scotland, Graeme. We've got in England, when I say we, in England, we've got an extension so that deals can be done between Premiership, Championship, League One, League Two, wherever in England until the 16th. So we've got a little bit of an extension. To be fair, the window seems to have been going on forever anyway. So, I, for one, will just be glad when it's over and done with. And I'm sure Graeme's smiling there and Guy's smiling there. And let's get back to a bit of football, and let's see how these teams and how these new players all gel. But yeah, it's been a strange time.
Good stuff. guys, for all of you that are tuning in, what we offer you the opportunity to do, it's completely up to you guys. We'll certainly be doing it throughout the webinar, and that's to share your LinkedIn profile. So I noticed that, I think, Guy, you've already chucked it on there, haven't you? There's Graham's just done it as well. We find that's probably the best way of sort of exchanging details on these type of things in a sort of safe and GDPR compliant way as well. So if you do want to share your details, put it on the chat so everybody can see, and then they can make up their mind if they want to connect with you as well. Obviously, we'll have some time at the end as well for some questions. What I'd say is, if you could put your questions in the Q&A box rather than the chat box, that will make it much easier for me to manage those at the end. So there are two boxes there, Q&A and chat. Make sure you put your questions in the Q&A one, and we'll get through as many of those both throughout the sessions and of course at the end as well. All good. Right, let's crack on, because time always evades us at the end. So if I just return to my PowerPoint here we go. Now, Graeme, I normally try and find a really dodgy picture of the guest that we have on, but I have to admit I'm quite disappointed, because you seem to have avoided the sort of dodgy pictures, and there's nothing on the internet that really comes across as dodgy. But
well, I don't think you've looked hard enough, Ryan, to be honest. Although you found one with a little bit more hair. That was a good few years ago, anyway. That's for sure.
I'll do you a favour. Do you a favour that. So listen, great to have you on. And you're coming up to your first anniversary now as sporting director.
That's right. Yeah, it was announced in October 2019. So officially took over on the 1st of January this year. But yeah, pretty much been performing the roles for a year now.
Yeah. And just for the guys that maybe don't know so much about your sort of career, your sort of working career in football, how long have you been at Hibs?
So I've been at Hibs for 6 years now. Lucky to be involved in the game since I left school at 16. So I would always describe it as, after a relatively short and unillustrious playing career, managed to find my way into coaching and latterly scouting at Celtic, and then heading up the recruitment department at Hibs before I became sporting director. Fantastic.
Now, clearly, it's been a challenging time for football, even not just in Europe, globally, with everything that's happened. But of course, Scottish football had its own endemic issues even prior to COVID. And obviously, we saw all the disruption, the reconstruction that was going to happen or wasn't going to happen towards the end of the season in football. How is Scottish football? Are the wounds still raw? Obviously, the mob further down the road from you obviously didn't have the outcome that they wanted, but really, Scottish football, it has gone through a rather difficult period. Even not considering COVID, hasn't it?
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of the things you've mentioned there, reconstruction, etc., probably came about from COVID, and trying to find a solution that suited everybody, I guess, to either finishing the leagues or not finishing the leagues or getting them back up and running. So I think COVID's definitely been a catalyst from that. But I mean, I hope I get the chance to speak about it, Ryan. I'm a proud Scotsman and really positive about the game up here, and certainly would love to share some ideas I've got in terms of how we can maybe publicise the Scottish game a little bit, because we're now at a point where, whilst the national team hasn't qualified for a major tournament in a long time, but we've now got a national team at under 21s level and national level, which has got players playing at a really good level, and a number in the English Premier League. So I understand what you're saying about the challenges in Scottish football, and you're right to mention it, but at the same time, I think up here we can see a lot of green shoots forming and a lot of positive aspects of the game as well.
Yeah, and talking of sort of green shoots, to sort of carry on the analogy, I know you mentioned this when we had a bit of a chat the other day. The Hibs supporters, in the knowledge that they weren't going to be going to the game, absolutely incredible support to the club. Do you just want to, share for those that haven't seen what has happened?
Yeah, and I must admit, Ryan, of all the challenges, that is absolutely what's kept the club going over this period. 11,000 people have basically bought a season ticket at full cost, knowing that they're unlikely to come and watch a match. Well, when they bought them, some of them they probably didn't think they were getting until October, and those that bought even later in July and August are now probably realising they're not going to get to come until at least January onwards. But they've kept their money in, they've supported their club in a number of different ways, and that's absolutely allowed us to do what we've done, on a kind of recruitment side of things as well. So the report's been incredible, it really has.
Fantastic. Guy, I just want to bring you in at this point. Obviously, we've all seen a sort of difficult period in the game. How do you feel the sort of perception of sort of English clubs, English media is of Scottish football? As Graeme has mentioned today, there's so many reasons to be positive about Scottish football. They've got some top players playing at the very, very top of our domestic game as well. Do you think the Scottish game gets a bit of a raw deal?
Yeah, I think with the constant changes to the league format, it's quite disruptive. So when you're looking at it, say from a scouting point of view, or even from a loans manager's point of view, you're always trying to be one step ahead of where it might go, what league it might be in, how it's going to be structured in the future. And I thought when we was dealing, me and Graeme have dealt in the past over players before, and I think it's a very strong league. I've been up there a lot, scouted. I think there's some top players up there. We get them as well into our academies, and we obviously send them back up there with the internationals. So I've been around it quite a lot, and I think I would always send players up there for a big, strong physical perception. When you go up there, you see the talent that's in the Dundees, you see the talent that's kicking about the Hibs, the Rangers, the under 20 level, and you see the talent that's around the place. So the perception is a strong, robust league for sending our lads out there to play a real good, strong physical standard. But when you actually go and do your research, you do see a lot of talent and do see a lot of players going from the Scottish leagues into the European leagues with moves for the smaller types, the talented footballers and the clever footballers from, I would say, a first team environment. So it's got a bad rep, but I think that if you do your research into it, you'll find some good nuggets out of it.
And obviously, Tony, this year, sort of thanks to the exploits of some Scottish clubs, there's that additional European place to go for this year. Obviously, you've been doing business in Scotland for a number of years as well. What's your perception of the game up there at the moment?
I'm very positive about it. I mean, I think Guy's right in some respects. I think probably the changing variety of leagues, and I probably don't even really get the lower levels in Scotland, the League Twos and the Highland League and the Lowland League, and I've just sort of been introduced to those sort of leagues recently. But Scottish football and football players in Scotland is alive and well. There's no, I know scouts are going to many games over the season looking, and a lot of the Premier League clubs have a designated scout in Scotland because they know that they can get either good Scottish players or good players who have used Scotland as a stepping stone to the next level. And, there's no greater example than Virgil van Dijk, is there? I mean, is he the top central defender in the world? Probably yes. Did his progression from Groningen to Celtic to Southampton to Liverpool, it was a stepping stone, wasn't it? And it was a really good stepping stone where he could really grow into that role. So for me, there's as many good players in Scotland as, it's not as a big a country as England, or, we're looking at the Welsh League or the Northern Irish League or whatever, but it's a very, very good league.
You forgot Conor Cody.
Well, just look at the impact Ryan Kent's doing up there at the minute. Yeah. The Rangers lads, the English Rangers lads. I mean, we had Jordan Jones at Notts County, and Notts County was saying he wasn't good enough. And he's gone up there, he's gone back into St Johnstone to Rangers, and obviously kicked on, done fantastic. And, you're looking at Ryan Kent being called up for the England team by going and playing for Rangers. And that's how I remember Rangers growing up, when they were a real powerful side, playing Champions League against, obviously, Leeds back in the day. And that's how I remember Rangers, with Ali McCoist and even, an ex-teammate of mine, Chris White, played in that game. there's loads of opportunities up there for young players to go and establish themselves in first team environment. And you know my feelings on first team football. It's the place to be, even being the under-23s loan manager. It's the place to be, to learn your trade, to be exposed to real life football, and then see how you land in the leagues and where you progress to obviously get in the Premier League later.
Fantastic. Now, Graeme, I know you're going to share with us in a moment some of the key pillars that went into your sort of strategy document, which is really kind of you. But before we get into that, I just want to talk about expectation. I want to talk about how somebody in your position, sporting director of a club outside of the old firm, first of all, what is the expectation internally? How do you perceive the expectation externally, supporters, and how do you manage that with obviously two clubs spending a disproportionate amount on bigger, arguably better players?
Yeah, I suppose my answer to this, Ryan, will probably touch into the kind of strategy document I've got and give you a kind of view on the type of things that we're working on and working towards. But as a general answer, I mean, I think it probably touches. Sorry, guys, is that a bit of sound issue there, Tony? Is that all right? It probably touches on it probably touches on the things that you mentioned before, though. I mean, for me, perception's huge. I hear you guys speak about your perceptions of Scottish football, and that's absolutely something that we up here don't speak about enough. So you've got Virgil van Dijk and Andy Robertson. You know, you can always, I suppose, touch on the Celtic and Rangers because they are on par with some of the biggest clubs in England in terms of supporter base and infrastructure and the things that they have. But even outside of that, you know, you've got Andy Robertson that comes through Queen's Park initially, released from Celtic at a young age, Queen's Park, Dundee United, Hull, and Liverpool. You know, Scott McKenna's just recently gone down to Nottingham Forest from Aberdeen, played a number of games for Scotland now and playing in the Championship. You know, Ryan Fraser left Aberdeen as a young player and now doing very well in the Premier League. John McGinn is certainly for us a huge, we're hugely proud of him and what he's done, but came out of the academy at St Mirren, played in their first team, came to us for a period of time and moved on, and is now again doing well at the top level in England. So, you know, as a Scotsman, that's not even touching on some of the other ones that have gone, your Victor Wanyama's and Fraser Forster's who have gone and revitalised their career up. So perception's huge. And just when you ask about, you know, where we want to be as a club, I think perception's big in that as well, because there probably is a perception that no club can really challenge Celtic or Rangers. You know, they're just too far away. We take, and it's interesting, guys, on the panel, but we take huge inspiration from Leicester. You know, nobody would have given them any chance whatsoever of going and competing at that level and winning a league in comparison with the amount of money that was getting spent at that time in the Premier League in England. So why not? You know, and that's where we've been fortunate. Actually, we were taken over last summer by an American who's just coming in and asking that question. Why do we think third's a success? You know, why are we comfortable just competing for third place or trying to qualify for Europe? Why don't we actually get ourselves in a position where we can have a go? We're not going to be able to outspend Celtic and Rangers. I think that's pretty clear. But, you know, hopefully we can go and try and compete with them. Why not?
Absolutely. Okay, let's get into that. Let's get into that document. Here we go. Yeah. So first of all, when did this sort of strategy document come about? Is it complete? Is it a living document? And who were the participants in putting it together?
Yeah, so I could probably speak at this for quite a while, Ryan. We arrived, and I say we, it was myself that was employed at the time by a guy called George Craig, who was the head of football operations, who in turn was employed by Leanne Dempster, the chief executive, and literally the summer where Hibs were relegated to the Championship. So I think at that time, the board at Hibs had a vision that they wanted some new ideas and a new structure. So they brought in a new chief executive. She appointed George in that role, and he appointed me as the head of player recruitment. And I'm not saying, I mean, at the time, I think we inherited about 8 first-team professional players, literally just after Hibs had been relegated. So it was a case of saying, look, every decision that we made for that period of time voted out the Scottish Championship. So I suppose when you talk about having a strategy, the strategy was quite obvious, just get out of the league. You know, Hibs should be in the Premier League and competing at the top end, in our opinion. So every decision you make, every, pound that you spend has to be trying to get out the league. Unfortunately, we were in that league at a time where Rangers and Hearts were also there for different reasons. So it took us 3 years to get out of it, which was disappointing. We thought we should have done it quicker. But it was actually the third year where we all kind of sat, myself, George and Leanne had a really close working relationship. And we discussed, well, what happens when we do get promoted? We think this is a year where it's likely to happen. We were sitting February, March time, a couple of results away from doing it. What's next? What does success look like for Hibs in the Scottish Premier League? And I think if you'd asked the supporters base at that time, some of them would have said right away, we should be challenging Celtic and Rangers. Some would have thought they should be challenging for the European places, the top 4. Some would have said, look, top 6 is probably, a good achievement. And one maybe just staying in the league and building from there. So there wasn't, we'd had it for 3 years where there was only really one defined goal, which was pretty clear and everybody understood it. So we had to kind of, come up with another one. And this was a list of the things that we spoke about and what we wanted Hibs to be and what we thought Hibs could be as a club. So point one, actually, and it sounds quite a silly thing, but actually to have a document that you can reference and work off was pretty critical because there hadn't really been one before. So just pulling that together. And again, the other things in there, to compete regularly in European football, to be seen as having a leading player development academy in Scottish football and to promote revenues through player trading. It sounds quite obvious. I think most clubs in Scotland would say to a greater or less extent, these are the things that they want to do. Europe is achievable in Scotland and even hopefully more so this year with an extra place. So it could be the top 5 out of a team of 12 that can compete and get into European qualifiers. So European football is achievable. There's actually two probably things just to touch on with this that, when we did it, it was probably quite widely recognised that was the type of club that most people saw Hibs being. But it's only really when you use a wee bit of hindsight and take a step back from it, you realise this is a club that Hibs have never been. They've never competed in Europe regularly. They've never traded players regularly, and they've never brought through players from the academy regularly. They've done it at spells in their history, and they've done it successfully in those spells. So I think when we spoke the other day, we're talking about, the building we're in just now, £5 million training centre. There was a redevelopment of the stadium, which cost in the region of £20 million. The vast majority of that was built from the players that they sold from the academy and players that they were able to trade through that period of time in the kind of, the early 2000s, early to mid 2000s. So, but again, that was a spell, and then there hasn't really been too much since, and hopefully we're coming back to trying to do that again. So they've competed in Europe on occasion, but probably not regularly. So it's trying to actually put things in place now that help us to do these things. That's the big challenge.
Mm-hmm. I'm interested to talk about point number 3. Because I'm always interested when clubs try and align themselves to a sort of style of play, because that must be the hardest, mustn't it? Because sometimes it's not appropriate to play that way, or if you're away at Celtic or you're away at Rangers, are you still taking that philosophy into the game?
Yeah, it's a good question, Ryan, and I think this is probably the bit where it's actually had a big impact on a number of things and decisions that we've made. So, for example, hiring head coaches, and that was one of my first jobs. In this role in October last year, was kind of leading on a project to actually recruit a head coach, and that was a pretty key one because there was a number of people that we considered and looked into that played a counter-attacking style of football that was probably a lot more defensive-minded, a lot more soaking up pressure and hitting on the break. And that, for us, is just not a style of football that the Hibs supporters would want. They want to be attack-minded, they want to be on the front foot. So, in essence, we had to try and find a coach who was keen and capable of developing a team to play in that manner. And then the next stage of that is obviously you need to give that head coach players who are capable of doing that and playing in that style as well. So, and then thirdly, clearly you need your academy coaches to be working with the young players coming through to be capable of doing that. So we didn't want to be so prescriptive to say, look, it needs to be 4-3-3 and it needs to be a certain, very definite style. But absolutely what we need to be is dynamic and attack-minded because the Hibs supporters just wouldn't accept anything else.
Guy, I'm just keen to bring you in on that point because I know we've spoken about style in the past, and it's a really interesting conversation. And Leicester's a great reference point, aren't they? Because the season they won the league, very, very low possession of the ball. a lot of wins. You know, there's more than one way to skin a cat, isn't there? I mean, what's your impression of sort of point number 3 there for Hibs, and how do you think it works for other teams?
It's understanding the club's philosophy and like ideology and all them fancy words that we come out with. But this I suppose point 3 was hitting Leicester on the head straight away. Really, for me, dynamic, fast-paced, high-pressing, attacking brand, and we have a great turnaround of the ball on the floor. It's slick, it's smooth, and hitting teams where they don't want to be hit. Again, example of Man City on this week. Obviously, sorry, last week. It's been fantastic. But when I look into these things as sporting director or head of recruitment or even a manager's ideas, it's yes, you want to play a brand of football, but I would also want to ask you a question, Graeme. In you're saying the fans want to see that. How do you work that out? Is it hearing the cheers on the sidelines, or actually getting in the information from them and discussing with certain fan groups of styles of play and understanding their ideas on what they want to actually see? Because most fans I know in my lifetime have always just wanted to win a football match because they've forgot what they've seen after a couple of beers anyway.
Yeah, do you know what? It's a great question, Guy. And I can give you. It's probably back to one of the things I mentioned earlier about perception. So we've had a pretty good start to the season, I would suggest, and the results on the pitch. But we had a run of games. So St Johnstone away, we got a penalty in the 90th minute to score and win 1-0. Dundee United away arguably had more possession and more chances in the game, but we won 1-0 away from home. So that came within a kind of 7-day, 10-day period. Those couple of results. And there was a narrative that started within the supporter base. So you know how it starts. It's on social media. The local newspaper then picks up on it, the Edinburgh Evening News, that Hibs aren't this dynamic, fast-paced attacking team that everybody expects. And there was a perception that started, that we wanted to be a defensive team, or that we were sitting back and trying to hit the break. And there was a narrative that came from that. And this, I mean, again, I'm sure we'll speak about it later on in terms of maybe marketing and setting narratives. But what our media department did that was brilliant was actually come out with a tweet initially that said, since Jack Ross came in, Hibs have scored the most goals in the Premier League outside the Old Firm. So we are an attacking team, and instantly it changed the narrative. People were then, the national newspapers then started picking up on Hibs being, the third best team in the league since Jack came in and started taking the team in November and scoring the most goals outside of Glasgow. So, I mean, it's a good question, Guy, but I guess that maybe just gives you an example of that. Was within a 10-day period, a narrative started building when we were winning games that the supporter group probably weren't overly pleased that we weren't, winning or creating 25 chances. The fact that we actually found a way to win those 2 games for us internally was great, put us in a really good position in the league. But we actually had to set the narrative ourselves with the media department's help to put something out there that then changed the narrative again. Following week we go and win 3-0 and suddenly everybody thinks it's all right again. We're back to being an attack-minded team all of a sudden. So,
what I do like, sorry, Ryan.
No, you go, Guy.
What I do like is, a lot of clubs these days now, more than ever, are going back to fans rather than just pumping content of positivity. They're actually going back to fans and opening up discussions, like you said with the tweet. We had Rob on, going back to people and saying, look, this is how we're playing, this is what we do, and even bantering with fans across social media sites, giving some sort of life to their own, content provider, which I think is a great thing because it just gives you some sort of depth into the football club and the thinking behind it, like you've just explained it. The thinking behind why you're doing that, why are you hiring a head coach rather than a manager? Why are you getting someone in with Jack Ross's background? Why are you doing all these things? And I think when the fans get that sort of dialogue from you guys on a consistent amount of time over the course of a season, I think it increases the fan base as well. I think it increases the fan base because they want to watch that brand.
I think it's interesting. You and I spoke, Ryan, earlier in the week about this concept of a DNA document. So that's something that we wrote before the new owner came in. So what he's done now is actually increased it. So he's got a strategic plan now, he calls it, which encapsulates the whole club. And this is a bit, Guy, I mean, there's 2 observations for me. One is, having it on a bit of paper is good, and it certainly gives us a reference point. And as I say, when we recruited Jack Ross as a manager, we went back to that and referenced it. But making these words on paper come alive is really difficult, And actually, you're forced to make decisions on that all the time. So I'll give you an example. We're delighted that young boy George Toy's come out of the academy this year, plays left back in the first team, 18 years old, and he started every match this season. Brilliant. Moments in games where things have happened that might have turned a result. Now, I'm not suggesting for a second that would have meant he doesn't start the next week, but of course there's maybe another decision there to make. So the fact that he started 9 games this year for us strategically is brilliant, but there's such fine lines in the middle of that to say, well, maybe he might have, maybe he might not have, you know. And obviously now we hope he continues to go from strength to strength, keeps developing. But you kind of get my point that there's so many things in there that for us, we can put a bit of a tick in that box now and say we're developing young players. You know, the players are now coming through the academy, but it's not easy because at the same time you still want to win. You know, you still want to be the top end of the league. You still want to get your results and everything else. And the second thing I was going to say on that is the owner taking it to a wider strategic plan for me is really good, and it's really important because the people who sell tickets in the ticket office are as much of a part of what we do on the pitch as anybody in at the training centre. Everybody needs to be, you know, absolutely behind a kind of club-wide philosophy of what we're trying to do and success. So that's an ongoing challenge, I guess. But no, it's certainly we're certainly at a point now where I think we need to do, you know, we need to do a lot more to make that document come alive.
Graeme, if I can just jump in here, obviously point 5 is the player trading model, and you've alluded to that it's a balancing act between having that 17-year-old on the pitch, and you know, for me, every time you put 90 minutes into a teenager in a Premier League, you're putting value on that teenager if he manages to do well in the game. But how do you balance that player trade model? Because let's use the John McGinn example. John McGinn goes down to the Celtic are interested, but he goes to Villa. Then have you got somebody who's ready to step into that role, or then are you looking to the market? Is it, you know, can you sort of track it so that you've got immediately one in the building that can take his place? You know, and I always look at Brentford as the very, very good at this player trading model. And, you know, in terms of size of the club, they're probably smaller. Are their fan base than Hibs? They're in the Championship. Obviously, they're in London, obviously. But, you know, there's some similarities there.
Absolutely, Tony. And you're right to mention Brentford. I mean, I think if I'm honest, guys, there won't be anything in that document, you know, the 6 or 8 points here that would be new to people. I don't think there's anything there that's vastly different. I think it is absolutely what you've just mentioned is about how you deliver on it. And Brentford have been fantastic. The interesting thing for me with Brentford, though, is that they continue to perform on the pitch. Because actually, if we look at our squad just now, we might say of a 20-player squad, there's maybe 6 players that we think have got a genuine value. But at the moment, they're performing and the team's doing, you know, pretty well, and we're up at the right end of the league, and we're hopefully still on the coattails at Celtic and Rangers. But if you start moving 2 or 3 of those pieces out of that team and then have to replace them, you know, there's a big change in that dynamic. So the best clubs who are sufficient at recruitment can actually have that planned in advance, and that's something that we would love to do going forward. So it probably comes back to that document, doesn't it? That you can tick any one of those things at any one time, but trying to tick them all at the one time is a massive ask.
I suppose that's the trick. That's the trick, isn't it? Or that, you know, you've only been in for a year. You're developing it. You're building, and then, you know, when you get there, you hopefully be able to tick all the boxes.
Yeah, I think just going back to Guy's point is a really good point in terms of the dialogue, how you manage the dialogue with supporters, because for me, I think it's you at times it's in when clubs enter a dialogue with fans, you are in danger of opening Pandora's box, and whilst at the start it's all really positive, and if we get a nice playing set of results and all this type of stuff, but what are you doing to put some robustness in those supporters to stick with you when things maybe don't go well?
I think I'll probably mention this anyway a bit later, guys, but player marketing is something that's really interesting for me. So I'm going to give you an example here, and I can speak. I know there's quite a few people on it now, but it's a football-based audience, so I'll share it. You know, we had a really tough start to last season. We recruited a lot of players. There was quite a big turnover in the squad, you know, and we recruited a lot of players. And we went through a spell where we didn't start the season particularly well. And obviously the recruitment was coming for pretty wide criticism. You know, the club was coming in for pretty wide criticism. But we got an unfortunate that meant Paul Heckingbottom left the role as manager. It was our head of academy that ended up taking the team, an ex-player. A lot of the coaches already stayed behind. and we got a 4-1 win at St Johnstone, which was the last game, or the first game, sorry, after Paul left. And we put out a tweet again about one of the players, and again, this is because a football audience will share it, and it was basically saying that he covered the most distance in the match. Instat, with a bit of a relationship with Instat at the time, so we put this out to say Melker Hallberg covered the most distance in the match and had 100% pass accuracy. Now, for everybody here who's a football person, you absolutely know that those two stats are utterly meaningless when it comes to saying anything about performance. He ran about a lot and he didn't give the ball away, but what we did was there was 3 instances where he made a fantastic forward pass and split a unit. So we put that up on the website. Now, suddenly, the local newspaper took that on to say Melker Hallberg was one of the best signings in the Premier League that summer, because we started to create a narrative. And now, again, we couldn't have done it if we'd have lost the game, because clearly, nobody would have been interested. But it was actually picking up on these little bits to say, and just like I mentioned a little bit, I suppose, a wee minute ago about the style of play, let's find a little bit of information that starts to set the narrative rather than having to be driven by somebody else's narrative. So, we're trying to do that a lot more now. I mean, and again, I'll share this one with you in the... because there's a football audience, and it's something that really annoys me. We've got a really talented called Ryan Porteous, who's just got in the Scotland squad. And the word that people use, the first word that gets described in the media here about Ryan Porteous is rash. And it really annoys me, because the kid's had 2 red cards in his career, albeit one of them in particular was for a particularly robust challenge. And he's aggressive. He's an aggressive player, but he's 21 years old. He's played nearly 80 matches for Hibs, and he's been in the Scotland squad twice. There is a million and one other things that we can describe Ryan Porteous as other than rash. Call him aggressive, absolutely, because he is, but he's a ball-playing centre-back who's mature beyond his years, and he's a leader, and he's a winner, But yeah, and that's the big thing I'm talking about in here, that we need to actually start creating that narrative with that young player, because what's out in the public domain at the minute, in my wholehearted opinion, and unbiased opinion, I'd like to think, is fundamentally wrong. So, we as a club need to do that. Absolutely need to do that.
Yeah, I find that approach, and I love that you're using the word narrative. It's a word that I use, and it's underused in football. I like that you're trying to get ahead of it. Guy got described as rash, but actually it was not true. It was not true.
What? Two sending offs in 80 games? Yeah. He sounds like a great player.
He's yours for 10 million, guys.
And slightly aggressive.
Just slightly.
Fantastic, absolutely brilliant. I think I just want to return very, very quickly to that document, just to make sure we've not missed anything off. I mean, do you just, in terms of just sort of wrapping up final statements, Graeme, in terms of the work that you're doing on maybe point 6 in terms of the tech innovation, obviously perhaps you haven't got the sort of revenues and the budgets to do what they're doing in some of the Premier League clubs, but that doesn't mean you can't be innovative. I guess you think having to think outside of the box and do different things with the budgets that you have got.
Yeah, sure. I mean, there's actually, I think I've seen a question in the chat box popping up there, Ryan, so I could probably use this as an example to answer it. But somebody was asking about how we, we managed to bring in Jack Ross as a coach when there was other clubs chasing him. And again, this is probably part of where we want to be innovative within tech. So our performance analyst, I was involved in. Somebody asked me how I led that process, being new to the role, but I've probably been involved since Alan Stubbs in all the managerial appointments to a greater or lesser extent. And again, by the time we recruited Paul Heckenbolton, we had this DNA document to share with him as part of the interview process. So we did the same with Jack as well. But at that time, so our process for actually recruiting head coaches has evolved, immeasurably since we first did it. And the most robust process, I'd like to think, was bringing in Jack. We did look at things like, let's look at his type of recruitment. So what type of players does he want to recruit? And it was quite clear he had a favour for bringing in younger players more often than not. He did have a kind of, looked into kind of more domestic players rather than foreign players, which is something that, at the time, I think we probably had to come back to a little bit more. He certainly brought young players through the academy, all the clubs he's been at, and was willing to go and work with them and develop them. And he had sold players on for money. So there was a number of things within Jack's CV, if you like, at all the clubs he's been at that ticked the boxes there. but particularly in terms of the tech innovation. So the one bit that was different for us as our performance analysts using Instat was able to look at these things. So look at teams in Europe that played an attack-minded style of football, that didn't give up many chances, that outperformed their budget, etc., etc. And it wasn't an easy process for them at all. It took a huge number of weeks to actually compile something that was quite bespoke. But what we were able to do when we went to here's a short list of coaches and here's some reasons why. And actually, you know, the owner's always challenging us to look outside the box, think a bit differently, come up with different ideas. So we were able to share with him 2 or 3 managers that, I'll be honest, we didn't know. You know, we didn't know much about them, but actually their data showed up that they were the type of managers that had, you know, operated in similar environments to ours, similar size of clubs, played in a similar style of football. And actually one was the manager that went to Barnsley. So around about the time we were looking for Jack, they brought him in. So clearly there was some merit in that process, which identified a manager who's then gone to a club in the English Championship and done very well. So, you know, that's a kind of, probably just answering the question that came up on the chat there, but at the same time, answering your question about how we want to use technology a little bit smarter and a little bit more innovation.
And also, you were able to promise Jack Ross that there was no Netflix cameras at the ground, weren't you, as well?
That was a huge selling point for him, I must admit, a huge selling point.
I thought so. Okay, guys, we're gonna leave that section there. We're gonna obviously be able to come back and pick Graeme's brain a little bit later on when we have the panel discussion. But as you'll be able to see, we've been joined by Roberto. Roberto, good morning. How are you?
Good morning. I'm fine. Thank you very much, Ryan. I'm sorry for all the hectic situations that most probably are all in, or at least a number of us are in, with the closing of this transfer window. That's always hectic, but now due to these developments, maybe even more hectic than before. So
this is hectic is the new normal. That's
yeah.
I'm embracing it. I'm embracing it.
Normal. Okay.
So Roberto, you're in the Netherlands.
Yes, indeed. Yeah.
Fantastic. Excellent. So guys, for those of you tuning in, obviously each time we have one of these webinars, we like to focus in on a football transfer forum partner, somebody that we like to work with, people that we really rate. And obviously this week it is the turn of the European Football Agents Association. I'm just gonna share the slide that we're gonna go through. Roberto, here we go. So, Roberto, just talk to us about the European Football Agents Association, your role within it, and we're really interested to hear some of the things that you're working on at the moment. Obviously, a lot of the guys listening in today will either be agents or those working in football clubs that work with agents. And of course, we know we've been speaking about it for a while. There's some potentially big changes in the not too distant future. So, we're looking forward to learning from you.
Okay, thank you very much, Ryan. Well, it's a nice slide. I see there's the pre-beard era, so of the time that I was young and innocent. Well, AFA exists since 2007. AFA is, as seen on the slide, a not-for-profit organization, and it has as its members national agent associations. We are a European-oriented organization, but we have some affiliate members, and well, that gives us actually a worldwide scope. I think we're present now in almost every continent. We have Africa, we have Nigeria, Morocco as a member, Australia, Japan, Brazil, Argentina. So quite a wide network of members, and the key countries in Europe are member of AFA. So as said, members are national agent associations. So through that membership, we have a scope of around 1,500 agents that are connected directly or indirectly to AFA via their national association membership. The intention of AFA, when we created it in 2007, and I have to say, who is we, a number of influential agents. We currently have Rob Janssen with over 35 years of experience as our president, most recently in the news due to his transfer negotiations or contract negotiations for Ronald Koeman to Barcelona. but many others, obviously in those over 3 decades. Giovanni Branchini is vice president. We have in our board Leon Angel from Base Soccer in the UK, and also representing the AFA in AFA. We have Bruno Satin representing the French Players Agents Association, and German. We have Germany present in the board, and we have Brazil present in the board via Marcos Mota, an influential lawyer that's there on behalf of the Brazilian Agent Association. So that kind of gives us a worldwide span. What have we accomplished? I think firstly, what we intended to accomplish was to create a better image of the activities of agents. I started this once together with Rob Janssen to take that initiative, because I was researching the football law and football legislation and international football policy, let's put it like that. And I found out when speaking to agents that it was not my impression that every agent was a criminal. So I understood that there were many individual organizations that were already part of a collective, and by being part of that collective, they have been able to let their voice be heard in terms of developing policy, influencing policy that would help shape the landscape of the football industry. We have the clubs that are part of the ECA. We have players that are part of FIFPro. We have the associations, obviously part of FIFA and UEFA. We have the leagues, part of the European leagues. But whenever there was an issue that dealt with the transfer industry, it was always the player's agent that received the bad news and malpractices directed to the agent. And in my opinion, that was not correct, not consistent, and obviously not the total picture. So in order to better position the agent and to create a better image for the agent, we decided to create AFA via the structure that I just mentioned. I think it's almost undoable to create an efficient organization with all individual members. So if we would have 1,500 individual members directly member of AFA, it would be quite difficult. So this is the way we have structured it. At first, at the beginning, it was quite difficult to create a space in that arena where all the stakeholders were already present. So we have started to create a very good relationship with the European Commission. We received an official status as a sports organization with the European Commission, and that enabled us to be part of the discussions in relation to activities concerning players agents, and really gives us a head start when it comes to the applicability of European Union legislation to the activities of players agents, which is a very important aspect, because you know that the majority of the friction that derives from the application of regulations to players agents is always the friction between the rules and regulations of football associations and the free market rule, for example, free movement rules. In essence, is sports special enough that it should, without any barrier, regulate the activities of agents? For example, by imposing caps on the basis of sports specificity, need of protection of players, and so on and so on? Or do we also need to respect a certain form of freedom of the market and freedom of positioning in the market, and look at the agents as service providers and not directly a member of the football family? So that is where AFA has positioned itself in the beginning of its existence. I think that reflected on the agents in a positive way. It also secured a stronger position in the whole football policy spectrum and arena. And it gave us the opportunity to become a more respected sparring partner towards the other organizations. So now we have quite a good relationship with FIFPro. We have a good relationship with ECA, with whom we have talked already a lot in the past. But obviously, the most important relationship that you need to have in football when it comes to regulatory issues is with FIFA. And we had a little bit of a love-hate relationship in the last couple of years. But I think now we are in a position where we like to be, and I will elaborate on that in a minute maybe, because I would also like to say some other things that we have accomplished and I'm quite proud of. So maybe just let's focus on that before we start talking about the current situation in relation to regulations and principles that they're trying to work out in concrete regulations. What we are doing is not only focusing on regulating the actual activity, but also on the position of the agent in the football world, and not to close our eyes for problems and issues that are relevant and omnipresent in the football world. We have a collaboration with Mission 89. It's an organization that is quite active in fighting child trafficking and promoting communication in a transparent way towards talents and parents of talents. And we collaborate on various projects that they are carrying out. Well, basically the main issue in those projects is to communicate the activities of agents and to warn actually talented players about what is a real agent and when do you have to be very careful. Just got distracted there. When do you have to be careful when to approach an agent and when it's a fake agent, for example. Well, we all know those issues, so we focus on that, and we're very happy to collaborate with Mission 89 in that. Next to that, we are promoting education of agents, continuous education of agents. That is something that we have already started to do for quite a while via our national member associations. We promote, for example, workshops for the national members, for example, Pro Agent in the Netherlands, DFAV in Germany. They all provide agents with some education concerning all topics that are relevant for agents, from tax, legal, insurance, and so on. So that's what we promote also. And when it comes to the regulatory aspects, where are we now with FIFA? FIFA, as you know, has presented some principles for the future regulation of agents. FIFA intends to implement new regulations by September 2021. In my opinion, it will be a little bit later than September 2021. But that is the route they've embarked on. They have developed some principles. We were, in essence, as AFA, quite happy with a lot of those principles. And I will tell you just in a short bit what principles we, believe it's a no-brainer to support, but need some further fine-tuning in practice. But there were also two issues that were a little bit critical. Those were the issues concerning dual representation and concerning the envisaged caps on commissions. So we got into a little bit of a struggle with FIFA, because FIFA was of the opinion that AFA had been consulted in those principles, but we never had the feeling that we were properly consulted. So a little bit of friction was created there. And that led to a situation where AFA was forced to say, and follow the opinion of some other organizations, was forced to say that, hey, we have not been consulted, so we do not support any development in relation to future regulations if FIFA does not take the voice of the agents into proper consideration and invites us for a formal consultation. Because what we don't want is to be an organization that's just there for ticking the box by FIFA to say, hey, we've consulted the agents, so they're okay with this, so no problem, we will implement this. No, that's not the case. We believe that if some issues are not a part of a proper consultation, then we will not be able to support them. And then we believe that FIFA will have some problems also to duly implement new regulations, because the majority of the serious agents would be against the regulations. Okay, to become more concrete, what am I talking about? Let me first explain. Maybe it's better to say, where are we now? I think now, with the change of leadership at FIFA, first at presidential level, obviously, but now you see also that on the more administrative and the executive level, you see a lot of new faces. There are some people there that really are a breath of fresh air. Emilio Silva Garcia, who's there as the top lawyer, basically. Alistair Bell, who is now in a very high position at FIFA too. We have Luis Villas-Boas Pires, who is working as the head of intermediaries. We have James Kitchen, also a well-known sports lawyer now at FIFA. And we believe that their presence, was the concretization of a change of view. And with those guys on board, and also with Desiree Ornella Bella and on board, we believe that there's now a changed vision and really an opening to include also other parties in negotiations and discussions and consultation concerning a new regulation. So with those people in, I think that the door is open now, and we have been more comfortable to receive from FIFA also the new regulations that they want to implement. So I think this week or the beginning of next week, we will receive from FIFA the draft regulations that they have now made on the basis of the principles that they have developed. And I don't know how those regulations look like, so please bear with me, and I hope to be able to share with you in the near future, maybe in the Doing Business In seminar series. So these are there already, Tony.
What's that? What did you say, Roberto?
Maybe to share with you
the
regulations in the Doing Business seminar series.
It sounds to me, Roberto, it sounds to me that we've got some sort of hot off the press. In a couple of weeks, FIFA will give you them, their draft, which is another step forward, I suppose. But it was a great link into the Doing Business in Germany series. Obviously, myself and Ryan and Guy from the Football Transfer Forum, we're really excited about sort of partnering up with Roberto and the guys at the European Football Agents Association. So, Roberto, would you just tell us a little bit about the Doing Business series, Doing Business In series?
Well, the Doing Business series in, can I just touch upon those issues in the regulations? So give me just one more minute, Tony.
Go for it.
90% of the issues, because I think that's also relevant, 90% of the issues that are on the table now are supported by AFA. There is an international arbitration system making the lives of players' agents easier, a permanent education system that guarantees still a certain level of professionalism amongst agents. We believe that a stricter view concerning the transfer of minors is necessary. We believe that the licensing system is something that should be welcomed because it really creates at least a limited amount of credibility and professionalism. We would support the idea of a clearinghouse, to guarantee the proper payments of commissions and to avoid difficulties and disputes concerning those payments. And we are more critical towards caps on commissions and juror presentations. But we have now learned from FIFA that the principles that they have applied to that are not set in stone, and that it's still possible to think about how to implement potential caps on commissions in the international football industry, caps on commissions of players' agents. So that's just to finalize that, then you know what we are working on.
Great.
As mentioned, I think one of the foundations of AFA's view is permanent education and promoting professionalism. And that's why, I can speak on behalf of the AFA board and of the AFA organization, that we are very, very much, we're very happy to be able to collaborate with you guys in a series of seminars which touches upon the essence of what AFA believes is necessary to promote professionalism and education. It is a mix between some, you can even say academic content, from certain level, credible level, supported by credible people, experts in the field, education, in combination with, not denying what an agent actually does. That's doing business in various markets in the international football industry. We all know that football is a cross-border industry, and that it is impossible for one agent to know all the specificities of all the markets in the world. So together with you, we're happy to have developed this idea of doing business in. We'll start with Germany. I believe we have the main European football nations in the pipeline. but this is a concept that is able to be expanded to basically every relevant country in the world, because we have the networks. So depending on the interest, and I believe that the interest is serious of the audience, we could focus on various markets. The Doing Business seminar in Germany will start with Gregor Reiter, if I'm correct, and Ilya Kenzig. Ilya has been a football administrator for many, many years already. So from his perspective of being a football director, in a club director, he could give us the view from that perspective. And Gregor will give us the view first from a regulatory aspect. Okay, what do you have to do as an agent? What do you need to take into consideration before you're actually able to do business in a country like Germany? So what are the prerequisites for actually being able to enter that market? Do I need to register? What do I need to pay for a registration? Does my representation agreement needs to meet certain standards that are different than the standards in my country of origin? What happens if I mandate another agent to collaborate with me? What are some issues that I need to take into consideration when I negotiate an employment contract with the player? All those specificities will be touched upon. So I think it's very practical information for an agent to be active in one specific industry. And I think it's indispensable to be aware of that information. I'm not saying that such a seminar would allow you to do a transfer deal 100% individually, because maybe you still need some collaboration with other agents, but at least now you know the foundation that you need to take into consideration. So that's for Germany, and that's quite soon already. And I really look forward to start that with you. And yeah, I'm quite happy for all the energy that you're giving us, and the framework. So I believe that it's a match made in heaven, gents.
Very good, very good.
That's superb.
Well, for all those tuning in, obviously Tony will be sending you out the information about that, and I imagine you already have done, Tony. So keep an eye out for that. Roberto, very, very quickly, if people were interested to find out more about the European Football Agents Association, it's just a quick Google type, and then they're into the website.
Sorry, if they had
wanted to find out a bit more information about you guys, it's just there's loads more on the website, isn't there?
EUFootballagents.com. I think we have a general overview of the organization. You'll find the board there. You will